If the flag could talk, it could write a book.
This man's name isn't really great.
With
a breakfast which she's bought in a drugstore and looking in the window at Tiffany's.
My name is Jason Pollard.
So my name is Michelle Memra.
My name is Bing Liu.
Hi, my name is Beatriz Browne.
My name is Daresha Kyi. I am originally born in Los Angeles, raised in Dayton, Ohio, so I'm a Midwesterner. I love telling stories about badasses. That's my niche.
She just shouts out, "Kaiser, and I say, no."
Especially independent documentary filmmaking, it uses everything you got, right? So there's your social skills that come into play with picking your subjects and gaining their trust. There's your social skills in terms of having a crew and working with people and collaborating. There's your writing skills, because you have to write grants. There's your communication skills, because you have to do pitches. There's your creativity, because you have to figure out how you want to shoot this, then how you want to edit it, then what kind of graphics you want. So there's just, it's a full brain endeavor, right?
Skateboarding is more of a family than my family.
But as long as I'm able to go skate, I'm completely fine.
You know, I think I come from a very DIY space of filmmaking. And so the stories I told were always the ones that were readily available to me. I think one of the reasons why I got into filmmaking was because I was interested in a process of healing from trauma and violence that I'd experienced that I didn't know what to do with. I realize now that it's sort of become like my lifelong obsession, actually.
Oh, there you are.
Documentary to me is friendship. You know, it allows me to get closer to somebody, and it gives me an excuse to get to know them. I, was a journalist for many, many years. I mean, that's what I went to school for. And I became a filmmaker entirely by accident. Is this part of your story?
I prefer not to hide anything. I feel the moment I want to hide something, I say, watch out.
A lot of times people will comment about the film I made that the angles are like, you have such interesting artistic angles. Like, the camera's always down here. And it's because I wanted to be able to see Irene, so I wanted her to see my face. Well, then we became friends. Yeah. And at the time, you weren't writing and you didn't know why. The film that I made, which was my first film ever, and was a feature, and it was called The Rest I Make Up. And it was a collaboration with the Cuban-American playwright Maria Irene Fornes. I feel like the story entirely chooses me. I feel like if it's something that needs to happen, and there's a reason why we need a camera there. And if there's no reason why, I'm not drawn to it in the same way.
He didn't have to give the order. Someone would take care of it.
The FBI should have known.
What excites me about documentary work is it's two things. The first thing is it introduces me to new characters and to new worlds, to new people, right? To new real people. Second thing is that just the sense of learning, right? With documentaries, you're always learning some new information, right?
I want to write about whatever.
Function for me for archive, hopefully, is to really shed a new light on the past, right? Whether it's the person's personal past or it's a historical past. I mean, it can also shed light on the present day, right? To show what's happening in the present day. But ideally, it's to shed a new light on the past. And what does that mean? Well, that means that to me, really good archive is stuff that you haven't seen before, or you're trying to put that archive in a new light. So you've seen it before, but maybe I'm going to try to use it in a different way to illustrate or to illuminate, some kind of opinion that I have about history.
34 Carmine Street is a film about the small business culture in New York City. And we tell that story through the lens of an independent bookstore in the neighborhood of Greenwich Village.
The Village in particular was always a stomping ground for people from all over the globe.
I think that archives and archival storytelling is extremely important to documentary filmmaking because, one, it's recorded evidence of something that has happened, and 2, it helps instill memory. There's a standard misconception about archival storytelling that it always has to do with old historical events, but that's not necessarily true, right? Archive can be used in so many different ways, from photo montage to home videos to even actual physical documents that help elevate the storytelling. Because films are so visual, there are certain things that we as filmmakers cannot capture through the camera, this fancy camera that we have available to us. And so we use archival storytelling to help us support the film visually, but also how freaking cool is it?
Irene, does the camera make you uncomfortable?
Oh, no. I love it. Don't you understand? The camera to me is my beloved.
That's what I also love about archival, is that it creates texture and it creates surprise. You're like, oh, wow, where are we going now? I thought we were in New York in 2003 and we're going back to, 1953, and like, wow, look at that.
Part of what's unique about handling archival is that you're able to just, as a filmmaker, experience it yourself and then think about like what it means to shape that into story.
My very first and foremost place that I always go to is the local public library. So for me, that was the New York Public Library. One of the tricky parts about our film is that it was very low budget and very independent and self-funded. So we already had limited budget to work with, and we needed to source archive that was easily available to us, right? Without much licensing issues. So our standard places that we go to is the public library and Creative Commons archive that's available anywhere online. You'd be surprised with how much the library actually has.
You can also look at the National Archives. National Archives here in the States is a huge, free archival source. And it's usually good for older stuff. Like if you've seen anything about the 1963 March on Washington, is usually really nice looking film footage. That's from the National Archives at most 9 times out of 10. I think, Ken Burns laid out the template on how to treat stills, which is, move, super slow zoom, and super slow zoom out. And the trick for me is always, okay, if I have a lot of stills, how the hell am I going to make this look somewhat fresh? So yeah, you try to animate it in a different way. So, I learned from one editor to really zoom in on a specific part of a still. Is it a person's eyes? Is it their hand? Is it they're talking to another? Or you try to tell a story through stills. So yes, I'm always trying to animate the stills, but I'm trying to animate them in a way that is more than just a zoom in and zoom out.
The biggest challenges of working with archival footage are the quality of the footage sometimes, and that you're working with you can be working with so many different formats. And they all can look radically different from each other, right? But you're trying to create something that's cohesive. And so how do you do that with all these disparate images, right? I think audiences are sophisticated enough to understand and to accept different kinds of footage, And I think actually it gives the film another layer of flavor as well, that it's just like, oh, we're in the past, right? It takes your audience and they travel. They move back into the past when they see archival footage, right?
There's a faith that, if you spend enough time with people and build trust, then, you can almost tell any story about any issue.
Got a little creative with some of our ideal images that we weren't able to use, and we had a graphics person almost illustrate it from scratch.
Slower paced thing that's super emotional, almost on the point of being syrupy and melodramatic, and that's me, right?
It's be kind to yourself, and it's okay to learn on the job.
You do know what you're doing. You are a storyteller, and you have great stories to tell.